All right. Hi, I'm Margot Dana. I'm with the Utah Work Incentive Planning Services, and this training is going to be focused on Social Security disability basics, talking about the basic benefit information and the work incentives that are associated with them. The program that I work for, Utah Work Incentive Planning Services, helps people who are on Social Security disability figure out how working affects their benefits. So what we're going to talk about today, though, is not everything that you need to know to be able to understand how your benefits are going to be impacted. Today, we're just going to be talking about Social Security disability benefits. Social Security disability benefits is just one part of the puzzle. There are multiple, so the same amount of money can impact different benefits in different ways. So just be aware that we are only going to be talking about one section of the benefits picture today. So there are other things that people would want to know about if they are looking at going back to work and wanting to know more about benefits. So first off, though, let's talk about how Social Security works. There are, if you didn't already know, 4 different Social Security disability benefits. The disability benefits are broken out into 2 different categories, though. There are 3 benefits in one and 1 benefit in the other category. And the disability criteria is the same for all 4 benefits. Why do you care what benefit you're on? Because there are different rules for how work and income and assets can affect your benefits depending on which category you're in. They break them out into what's called Title II and Title 16. So the 3 benefits, the three Title II benefits, we're going to talk about first, and then Title 16 we'll talk about at the second half. So the 3 Title II benefits are Social Security Disability Insurance, or Ssdi, Childhood Disability Benefits, CDB, and Disabled Widows Benefits, or DWB or DWIB. Those benefits have some things that are in common. They have some things that are the same for all 3 of the Title II benefits. First, they're all related to someone paying into the system through work. Either the person themselves or a family member has paid into the system. 2, they all come with Medicare. Not Medicaid, Medicare. So, but it's not necessarily right away. It is within 24 months after they are entitled to benefits. That's when they will become eligible for Medicare. Now, some people may not have to wait the whole 24 months if they were going through the appeal process, and by the time they got approved, they went back far enough that it was beyond the 24 months, so some people don't have to wait once their benefits are awarded. But if someone gets on right away, then it could be 24 months before they have Medicare kick in. At that point, that's why a lot of people then would maybe potentially be on Medicaid in the meantime, or look at private insurance. Also, there is no asset limit for people on a Title II benefit. They don't look at income or assets. People could have 2 mansions and 10 Porsches. It doesn't matter. It has no impact on their eligibility for the Title II benefits. However, you might have someone who's on Ssdi who is on Medicaid, which does care about assets. So you still need to, there are some people who still might need to be aware of and pay attention to the asset limits, even if they are on a Title II benefit. Also, with the Title II benefits, the only income that matters is earned income. They don't look at any other kinds of income. They don't look at, maybe money someone made from an investment or money from a spouse. That does not impact Title II benefits. It is only earned income. So again, we are only talking about the Title II benefits, how they are impacted by work, how they work. We're not looking at anything to do with SSI, the Title 16 benefit. So nothing that we're talking about right now applies to SSI people. Just keep that in mind. So first thing I want to cover is Ssdi, Social Security Disability Insurance. That is the most common Title II benefit you're going to run into. How that works is every time we go to work and we pay our Social Security taxes, that is us paying into the Social Security system. The more we work, the more taxes we pay, right? But also the more credits we're building up in that system. And if someone never has a disability and they hit their full retirement age, then they could draw that out as Social Security retirement. But some need to access it earlier because they have a disability. So that would be paid out to them as Social Security Disability Insurance. So in essence, when we pay our Social Security taxes out of our paycheck, that's us paying our disability insurance premium. And this is just the government version of long-term disability insurance. So the amount that someone gets in Ssdi is based off of how much they paid into the system. So if someone's only worked a little bit, they might only be eligible for a small amount of SSDI. So I have some people who get $300 of SSDI, and then I have some people who get $2,300 of SSDI. So it really just depends on how much they paid in, how much they're going to get. Also, it matters when they worked. So Social Security retirement will look at the whole course of someone's work history and then kind of pick from there. Social Security disability insurance looks at the work that you've done in the 10 years prior to applying for disability. So it might be that someone worked 10 years ago and worked and became insured and paid in the system enough to be insured, but maybe in the last few years, in the last 10 years, they haven't worked enough. So it could be that they're not insured at this point where they might have been at some point in the past. Also, what matters is how old you are at the time you're applying. Someone who is younger doesn't have to have as many credits as someone who's older who's applying. So that's where you might have someone who's only worked maybe 2 or 3 years and they're getting a benefit, and someone else maybe has to work 10 years to get that benefit. So just that can also come into play when they're trying to decide who's eligible. So again, that's the main most common one, SSDI, Social Security Disability Insurance. But there are some others that you're going to run into. The next most common one is Childhood Disability Benefits, or CDB benefits. So a lot of times I have people who have never worked and they have a benefit that looks and acts like SSDI, and it's because they're on childhood disability benefits. But a lot of times people just assume they're on SSI because they don't have a work history. So childhood disability benefits are available to people if their disability began before the age of 22, and they have a parent who paid into the system and then is now drawing Social Security retirement, is either drawing Social Security retirement, Social Security disability, or is deceased. So if that's the case, then they can potentially draw from their parent's work record. So just so that you know, CDB, Childhood Disability Benefits, used to be called Disabled Adult Child Benefits, or DAC benefits. So even though Social Security changed the name many years ago, officially, a lot of workers at Social Security, some of their materials still say DAC or Disabled Adult Child on them. Workforce Services still calls it DAC in a lot of their policy. So just know that you are sometimes going to hear people say DAC when they really mean CDB. Know that they're the same exact thing. Two confusing acronyms, but they mean the same thing. DAC and CDB, same thing. So childhood disability benefits and SSDI have the same rules for working. However, CDB can be impacted by marriage where SSDI cannot. So someone who is on CDB, if they get married to someone who is not also getting another Title II benefit, either SSDI, CDB, or DWIB, then they will lose their CDB benefit. So you might have someone who is getting married to someone who is on SSI. And you might think, oh, well, they're on SSI, they're on another disability benefit, we should be okay. But unfortunately, SSI is not the right kind of disability benefit. It is a Title 16 benefit, not a Title II benefit. It has to be a Title II benefit for the person to be able to preserve their CDB benefits. So if someone who's on CDB marries someone who's on SSI, then they would lose their CDB benefits and then would probably have to look to see if they're eligible for SSI. So that is just something to kind of keep in mind, probably something that most people want to know about before they get married, so they know if they're going to lose all of their income or not. So the last benefit, the last Title II benefit, is not as common. I don't run into it very often, but it's disabled widow or widower's benefits. And this benefit is available for people who are over the age of 50, who meet the disability criteria, and who have a spouse who either died while they were married to them or who they were married to for at least 10 years before they got divorced from them. And if that person has passed away, then the spouse, the widow, or the divorced spouse can sometimes draw from their record. So a lot of times at that point, the person themselves has paid into the system enough that they would get SSDI on their own. So that's why there aren't that many people who get this. That's mainly for people who maybe were on SSI and then their deceased spouse, their spouse passes away and then they become eligible for disabled widows benefits. So other than the fact that it is kind of stranger criteria. You have to be over 50 and you can't have remarried before the age of 60 in order to be eligible for this benefit. It's pretty similar. There aren't a lot of other gotchas. Marriage after you get on doesn't affect it. So those are the 3 Title II benefits. And again, SSDI, Social Security Disability Insurance. If you work and pay into the system, then you can potentially become eligible for SSDI. If your parent paid into the system and you had a disability that began before the age of 22, then you can potentially draw from their record under childhood disability benefits. And sometimes people, if they're over the age of 50 and their spouse passes away, or someone they're married to for at least 10 years prior to divorce passes away, they can sometimes draw from their spouse's record. So, before we talk about how work affects that, I just want to kind of make sure that people are aware that what we're going to talk about right now, again, is just a reminder, we're only talking about how work affects the Title II benefits, not SSI, not Title 16 benefits. So, how it works for people in SSDI, and hopefully I'll be able to, you'll see on the slide here, that people have a trial work period. As soon as they become entitled to benefits, they enter into their trial work period. That trial work period, person will stay in that trial work period until they've used all 9 of their trial work months. So what that means is people have 9 freebie months where they can work and earn whatever they want 9 different times and still get their full SSDI check. They can earn unlimited amounts of money, $10 million a month, still get their full SSDI check. Those 9 months don't have to be used up in a row, though. They could be, or they could be spread out over many years. So how does someone know if they've used one of their 9 trial work months? Well, working alone does not mean you've used a trial work month. It's only if you work and earn above the trial work amount that it counts as one of those 9 trial work months. So if someone earns under that amount, it doesn't count as anything. So the trial work amount typically changes from year to year. This year, 2018, the trial work amount is $850 a month gross earnings. So if someone earns $850 or more, then they would still get their SSDI check. It would just mark off one of their trial work months as used. If they earn $849 or less, it doesn't count as anything. So let's do a little example. Let's say someone who is brand new on benefits, never worked so far, and they get a job making $1,500 a month. $1,500 is obviously over $850, so that would count as one of their 9 trial work months as used. They would still get their SSDI check. It would just mark off one of those months as used. So let's say they had that job for 4 months in a row. So now they've got $1,500, $1,500, $1,500, $1,500. Now 4 trial work months are used up. But let's say after 4 months, they have some health issues and they cut back on their hours, and now they're making $700 a month. $700 is now under the trial work amount, so that no longer counts as a trial work month. They're just hanging out wherever they left off last. So let's say though after a year of earning $700, then they take a new job and now they're making $2,000 and do that for 3 months. That's 3 more trial work months to use. Now they've used 7 trial work months total. Let's say after that, they maybe stop working altogether for a few months and then maybe eventually start earning $1,000 and finish up those last 2. So it could be that someone uses up their 9 trial work months all in a row, or it could be that it's broken out into several years, a few months here, a few months here, a few months there over time. So 9 freebie months where people can earn whatever they want, still get their check. Only months they earn over the trial work amount count as one of the months. Once someone has had 9 times of being over the trial work amount, then they complete the trial work period and trigger the next phase to begin. The next phase is called the extended period of eligibility. The extended period of eligibility works completely differently than the trial work period. So all the stuff we just talked about just now with the trial work period, that number, those rules, they stop mattering once you get over to the next phase. The extended period of eligibility, unlike the trial work period, it is a specific time period. It's 3 years long. The 3-year clock begins the month following the 9th trial work month. It starts the month following the 9th trial work month and ends 3 years later, whether the person works again or not. So that's why people really want to be tracking when they use their 9th trial work month, so they know when the 3 years begins and ends. So also different, for the trial work period, we said you could earn whatever you want 9 different times and still get your check. During the extended period of eligibility, however, if someone goes above a certain amount called SGA, then they do not get their check those months that they're above that limit. If they're under that amount, they do still get their check. SGA stands for Substantial Gainful Activity. Social Security basically says, can you perform substantial gainful activity? How severe is your disability? If it prevents you from earning at least the SGA amount, then you must still meet a check from them. But if you can earn more than that, then maybe they think you don't need a check that month. So that's kind of what their philosophy is on that. So substantial gainful activity, the SGA amount for this year is $1,180 a month gross earnings. So $1,180 a month gross earnings. So what that means is someone earns $1,180 or more, then they do not get their check that month that they were over. If they earn $1,179 or less, they do still get their check. So good news is, though, if they go over during that 3-year extended period, they're not terminated from benefits for going over. They're just suspended. They're just going to hold their check back for months that they're over. If they go back under within the 3 years, they can still get it back again. So, for example, let's say someone is earning $1,000, using up their trial work months. They still earn $1,000 the very next month when they start their extended period of eligibility. And $1,000 is less than the $1,180, so they're still eligible for their Ssdi check. So let's say they're getting their check for the first 6 months of the 3-year extended period. But then let's say they take a new job, and now they're making $2,000 a month. $2,000 is over the $1,180, so they're no longer getting their check. But again, just suspended. So it's going to be suspended for as many months as they're over. Let's say they're over for 13 or 14 months, but then maybe they go back under again. They let Social Security know their check would start again. Maybe a few months later, they go back over again. Check suspended again. Back under, check starts again. So someone can go in and out of suspense and not have to reapply. They just let Social Security know when they're over, so the Social Security knows when to stop their check. They can go back under, so Social Security knows when to start it again. So that is kind of the basic situation and how it works with the extended period of eligibility. But what happens at the end of the 3-year extended period? At the end of the 3-year extended period, if someone is under SGA, then they can keep getting their check. So just because the 3-year period ends does not mean the check is going to stop. It means that it's going to continue for as many months or years or even decades as the person remains under SGA and continues passing their medical reviews. But what happens if someone does go over SGA after the 3-year period ends? Then, yes, at that point, they would be terminated from benefits. So that's why people do want to be paying attention to where they are in the process. Do they have their 9 trial work months left? Are they in the 3-year extended period where they can get their check back if they go back under? Or are they in the after EPE period where if they go over SGA, they would be terminated at that point? So what happens, let's say someone does go over SGA, but it's because they found a great job and they found a way to manage their disability enough that they can make some good money and they're not worried about losing their check and things are going well for several years. But let's say after a few years, maybe they have a little bit of some health issues that come back and they end up back under SGA and they want to try to get back on benefits. There are 2 ways to potentially try to get back on. At any point after someone's been terminated, they can always apply for benefits again. So all that fun paperwork that people have proving they have a disability, they can do that again. And if they are approved, then if they are approved, however long that takes, then it would be, whole cycle starts over again, new trial work period, new extended period, etc. Now, a lot of people had an unpleasant experience in the application process. So Social Security has found a lot of people are afraid to try working because they never want to have to apply for benefits again. So they created a provision a while back called Expedited Reinstatement of Benefits. And this is a little bit faster, easier way of getting back on. And that is available to you if 2 conditions are met. 1, the time you're trying to get back on has to be less than 5 years from the time you were terminated, and you have to prove to them you had the same disability that you already proved you had the first time around. So if it's the same disability, less than 5 years, then you can potentially get back on through Expedited Reinstatement of Benefits, and while they're making that decision, they'll pay you temporary payments that you can keep no matter what they decide. So, but if they do approve you and say they think you get back on through Expedited Reinstatement of Benefits, then eventually, after an in-between period, that too could eventually lead to a new trial work period and starting over again as well. So that is the general overview of how it works for people on SSDI, CDB, or DWIB. So again, this is scratching the surface of what someone might need to know. There's a lot more to cover, but that's the general thing of how it works. So just know that if you have specific questions about this, then you'd want to probably talk to Social Security or meet with someone from my program. All right, what I want to do now is do a quick recap of what we've covered about Title II, and then we're going to move to SSI, the Supplemental Security Income, because that's a completely different program, different rules and everything, and you'll want to shift gears mentally. So, so far we've talked about how there are two different categories of benefits, one based off of someone working and paying into the system, and one based off of need, having low income and assets. We've talked about the Title II, the ones based off of someone paying into the system that come with Medicare, that don't look at anything but earnings, and that don't look at anyone, don't have an asset limit, and don't have an impact on that in that front. So, again, the three Title II benefits: Ssdi, Social Security Disability Insurance, Childhood Disability Benefits (CDB), and DWIB, Disabled Widow or Widower's Benefits. So, just to wrap up on the Title II benefits, with the Title II benefits, you don't have to report necessarily your work to Social Security every single month, but you do want to let them know when there's a change. So if someone's going above SGA, definitely tell Social Security so they know to suspend the person's check. And if you're going under, let them know so that they know to give you your check back again. So there are different ways to report. Good news is they recently, just in the last few months, have started giving people the option of reporting online through their My Social Security account. So if you have a My Social Security, if you sign up for a My Social Security account, you can start reporting wages that way. Now, there are sometimes other things you need to report to them, and only earnings can be reported through the online My Social Security account. So anything else would still need to be sent into them, either mail or fax the information into them. Also, you could also still get a work activity report from Social Security's website called the Form 821. You can print that out from their website, and that will allow you to also report your work, and then also any other work incentives and some other things that might be important to report to them at that time. So again, don't need to report necessarily every single month unless there's a change every single month, but mainly just make sure that they know when you're over or under either the trial work amount or the SGA amount so that they can know whether to start or stop your check, things like that. Okay, so now shifting gears. Now let's talk about SSI, Supplemental Security Income, and how that works. So again, SSI is the sole Title 16 benefit, and SSI, again, stands for Supplemental Security Income. And I want you to focus on that word supplemental, because that is the key to understanding how this works. SSI is a needs-based program. They're only going to give you what they think you need up to a certain point. So if they are trying to figure out how much they need to help out, they are going to look to see how much they think you need. So when they're trying to figure that out, they look at a whole bunch of different factors. One of the things they look at are your assets. So people who are on SSI and Medicaid in Utah cannot have more than $2,000 in assets if they're single. If they're a couple, they can't have more than $3,000. So in our state, these are the things that are true for both SSI and Medicaid, because Utah Medicaid pretty typically follows the SSI rules for assets. So I want to really quickly just kind of talk about some of the assets that do and do not count, because I get a lot of questions about these things. So first, someone on SSI can own a house. They can own one house as long as they're living in it. They can have one car or one primary means of transportation. If they have a second one, then the second vehicle would count, but the first one is excluded. Also, most personal household goods are not going to count towards the asset limit, like someone's clothes, their furniture, their TV. Those things are typically not going to count towards the asset limit, unless they have specific big-ticket items. Sometimes those will count, like a grand piano or expensive gaming system or something that's like $5,000 gaming computer or something. So basically, any time that someone has things that they don't need for their daily living and they could sell those things to live off of, Social Security expects the people to do that. So also things that don't count are most irrevocable burial funds or burial plots. So basically, as long as the person cannot get the money back, then it's more likely to not count as an asset. Also, medical equipment related to the disability, like a wheelchair or prosthetic, those things aren't going to count towards the asset limit. And thankfully, there is now a new option for people called ABLE accounts. So if you want more information about ABLE, it's a way for people on SSI to save without it counting towards the asset limit necessarily. There are some limits on what you can spend that money on, but it's pretty great program options for people. If you want more information, you can go to ablenrc.org and find out more about what states are available to you that you could potentially sign up for. Okay. Some of the things that do count, however. So we've talked about one house, one car, personal household goods, they don't count. But what does count? Pretty much everything else. So if someone has money in their checking and savings account, that's going to count. Most retirement accounts, there are some exceptions, but most of the time, people's 401ks, IRAs, that's going to count. Most trust funds are going to count unless they are set up in certain ways, specifically special needs trusts. But oftentimes people don't realize they need to set it up in a special way, and so then it does end up counting as an asset to people. Also, if they have more than one car, if they have recreational vehicles, then those things will all count as well. If they have a second or third home or they own land, then again, those things will count. Same thing if they have items that they collect or hold for investment value, like a stamp collection, things like that, those would count as well. So, quick review, what does and does not count as an asset. So, I'm gonna ask you the question and kind of in your head, think of the answer. So, would it count if someone had a $4,000 wedding ring? No, because that's personal household good, it wouldn't count. What if they have a coin collection valued at $12,000? Yes, that would count, because that's an investment value. Social Security would expect them to sell that and use that money to live off of. What if they had a motorized wheelchair that was worth $20,000? No, because that's something that's related to their disability and medical equipment. What if they had a personal computer worth about $600? No, probably wouldn't count as an asset. What if they had a home that they lived in, but they also owned some property up in the mountains? Well, the home they lived in would be excluded, but the property up in the mountains would count, the value of that. What if they own one car? Sure, they're fine. That doesn't count towards the asset limit. What if they own a boat worth about $17,000? Yes, it would count, unless it was their primary means of transportation. So if someone lives in like a lake community where everyone gets around by boat, then that would not count. That would be the excluded vehicle. But if that is just their recreational vehicle for fun, then yes, that boat would count towards the asset limit. What if they had $100,000 in a trust, but it was a special needs trust? Then no, as long as it was a special needs trust, it shouldn't count as an asset. But the person just has to make sure that they set it up just right. Social Security is pretty strict about how the trusts are set up in order for them to be excluded. So last one, what if someone has $1,800 in their savings account and then $1,700 in their checking account? So a lot of times I get this question because I have people, this is probably at least once a year, I have someone say, oh, but I don't have $2,000 in each of my accounts. I'm under in each account, so I'm okay. But really, they're not, because Social Security looks at all of their assets combined. So even if they have less than $2,000 in this account and less in this one, but together they have more than $2,000, then they are over assets. So that is something that people need to be kind of thinking about. So bottom line is people on SSI can have some assets. They just have to be kind of careful about how they set them up and how they save money. So that's a little bit about how SSI looks at assets. Now I want to talk about how SSI is impacted by income. So SSI each year, typically it'll go up a little bit each year. This year, the SSI maximum amount that someone can get is $750 a month. So if there's a couple, then the couple would get $1,125. Those are the 2018 numbers. So in a way, you can kind of think of SSI as a cup that holds $750. And when SSI is trying to figure out how much they need to put into the cup to make sure the person has at least $750 to live off of, they're always going to look to see if someone else or someplace else, another program, somewhere else can fill up that cup first, and then they will just fill up what's left, up to the $750. So in other words, they will supplement the person to make sure they have at least a bare minimum amount to live off of. It's just to cover basic food and shelter needs. It's not to make someone rich or wealthy or comfortable. It's just to cover basic needs. So if people have money coming in from other sources, it will impact how much SSI they need according to Social Security. So different kinds of income fill up the cup in different ways, though. If someone has money that is not from work, that's unearned income, then it's pretty much a dollar-for-dollar reduction off of their SSI. So unearned income could be things like maybe they've worked enough to get a little bit of Ssdi, but not enough to make it so they're not eligible at all for SSI. So maybe they get a little bit of both. Or maybe they get some alimony payments, or they have a nice relative who likes to give them money every month, or maybe they get some unemployment benefits for a few months, or maybe they get married and a portion of their spouse's income would then count to them as unearned income. So anything that's not from work is going to be, again, pretty much dollar-for-dollar reduction off their benefits. So how it works is they will ignore $20 of any unearned income, but the rest of it would come off the SSI. So for example, let's say someone had $320 of SSDI coming in. Social Security would ignore 20 of it, but $300 of it would be counted and would come off of what the person gets in SSI. So $750 minus $300 gives us $450, and so that's why you have some people who can get a little bit of both, SSDI and SSI both, because of how they look at unearned income. So someone who had SSDI of 320 would then have 450 of SSI, so they end up with about 770 total, about $20 more than someone who just gets SSI alone. But otherwise, it's not really much of a financial incentive for people to have unearned income. They come out in pretty much the same place at this point. But if they counted earned income the same way they did unearned, would people have much financial incentive to work? Maybe not so much. The good news is they want people to work. So in order to encourage that, they count a little less than half of what the person earns so that the person can typically come out ahead with more money in months that they're working. So how that works is, let's say someone has $1,200, and they first thing Social Security would do is they would ignore $65 of any earnings they had. And if they didn't have any unearned income, they would take off that 20 from the unearned side, and they could bounce over to the earned side, and now they take another 20 off. So 1,200 minus 65 minus 20 gives us 1,115. But that's still not that great of incentive. Just ignoring $85 of their earnings isn't that helpful. So not only do they ignore $85 of the person's earnings, now they ignore half of what's left. So 1,115 divided by 2 is $557.50. So that is what they would count of the person's earnings. So they earn $1,200. Social Security would look at it like they only earned $557.50. So that's what they would saying that they're putting into the cup. And then SSI just needs to fill up what's left. So 750 minus 557 gives us 192.50 of SSI. So someone earns $1,200, their SSI would go down to 192. But how much total monthly income would they have at the end of this month? $1,200 from work plus 192 in SSI, that's $1,392 of total monthly income. How much money does someone on SSI have in months they're not working? Just $750. So even though their SSI does go down when they work, their earnings will more than replace what they lose, so they almost always come out ahead with more money in months that they're working. So bottom line for SSI people is they typically have more money when they're working. So good news is, too, a lot of my clients are concerned about the fact that they're keeping their Medicaid when they start working. So just like with Title II benefits, Medicare came with Title II benefits. With SSI, Medicaid comes with SSI. So if someone is earning, maybe they're not working at all and they're getting the full amount of SSI, they're also getting Medicaid as well. But what happens when someone keeps working and earning so much that the amount that SSI needs to supplement them keeps getting smaller and smaller until they get to the point where SSI says, we don't need to supplement you at all. Your earnings are so high that you're supplementing yourself. You're filling up the cup yourself. You don't need to be helped. So if that happens and it is work that makes your SSI check go down to 0, then you can go into a special Medicaid-only status where you can still keep the free Medicaid that comes with SSI, still keep your connection to SSI, you're just not getting a cash benefit from them anymore. The official name of that status is 1619B status, which is just the number of the provision of the law that created this rule. So, but I call it Medicaid-only status because it's a little bit more descriptive. But what that means is people can earn up to a certain amount and still be in this Medicaid-only status. Now, unfortunately, I don't have the 2018 numbers yet. They haven't come out yet. But the 2017 number is $34,222 a year. In other words, someone last year on SSI could have earned up to $34,222 a year, or about $28.50 a month, and still be in that free Medicaid-only status. Still be on SSI. You can be in that status indefinitely. You could be in it for years potentially, as long as you kept passing your medical reviews and being under assets. So if at some point the person reduces their earnings, they just let Social Security know and they're back into pay status again. So basically, this is a way for people to work without being worried about losing their Medicaid or their connection to SSI and being able to easily go back in and out of pay status when they're on Medicaid and go into that 1619B status. So I think it's a pretty good work incentive. But what if someone is on a waiver, a home and community-based waiver? So even though someone could be able to earn up to the 1619B threshold amount and still have the free Medicaid, there are some people who have additional services because they're on a waiver that's administered through DSPD, like the Utah Community Sports Waiver, the brain injury waiver, things like that. The waivers have their own set of income limits. So even though someone could have basic Medicaid and earn up to the $34,222 a year, if they wanted to keep their waiver services, they would have to look and pay attention to the waiver income limits. And that's going to be different depending on which waiver they're on. So that's something you'd want to look into specifically. We can't tell you exactly on that because it's different for each waiver. So just be aware that it's still pretty good for most people. They can still earn a decent amount and be eligible for the waivers without having to pay. But the basic Medicaid, they can earn more to keep the basic services, but they have to pay attention to the waiver limits if they want to keep those DSPD funded services. Okay, so let's talk about timing. A lot of times people don't realize that SSI is based on a 2-month lag in between when the person works and when their check reflects that change. So Social Security they can't change someone's check and adjust it accordingly before the person's even worked. So it's always going to be a little bit behind. So they always have it 2 months behind typically. So whatever the person's getting this month in SSI, it is not based on this month's income. It's based on 2 months ago's income. So if 2 months ago they had 0 income, that means this month they're eligible for the full amount of SSI. But what if 2 months ago they were 2 months ago they earned $1,200? That would mean this month they were eligible for $192 of SSI. So anytime someone's working, just know that it's going to be 2 months before that change is reflected. So if you stop working, however, that also means that you might have 2 months where you're getting the lowered amount based on back when you were working, but you may no longer have earnings to supplement it. So if you are working or you're starting to work, you do want to put some of your money into savings enough to cover at least 2 months worth of your expenses so that if you ever stop working, you are not short and unable to pay all your bills. So again, save some money, but don't save more than $2,000 unless it's an Enable account. But otherwise, just kind of keep that in mind so you don't end up in a bad spot. So of course, it's Social Security, so there are some exceptions. If the person is not eligible for a benefit at all, then there is no 2-month delay. So there are most of the time there's a 2-month lag, but there are some circumstances where there is not a 2-month lag. And so sometimes there are times when people really were overpaid immediately that month they were ineligible. So bottom line for SSI people is they typically have more money when they're working, and they can earn up to the state 1619B threshold amount and still get their free Medicaid and can keep their connection to SSI. So reporting for SSI, it's a monthly calculation for Social Security. So people want to report their work on a monthly basis. There are lots of ways to report it. The probably You can do it by phone, in person, mail or fax in your pay stubs. But probably the best way to do it is by using the smartphone app or the mobile wage reporting app. That is you essentially entering the data in for them. So you don't have to wait for someone at Social Security to have time to enter in your pay stubs into the system. You're just doing it for them when you use the smartphone app. So that's why we kind of recommend that, because it avoids overpayments to some degree, helps out with that, reduces the chances of those. And you can get that app from either the Apple Store or the Google Play Store. Those are available to anyone. And use the app once a month, beginning of every month, and then you'll be less likely to have overpayments or have issues with your SSI. So we've covered today all the Title II benefits, SSDI, CDB, DWIB, and the work rules that apply to those, the trial work period, extended period, SGA, those kinds of things. And then we just talked about SSI, which is a needs-based benefit that is adjusted according to your other income. So both of them have their pros and cons in terms of the work incentives. And again, we've only covered the basics, just some minimal stuff. So if someone wants some more information, there are some resources that'll be on this slide. You can call the Ticket to Work helpline for some general information. There are some phone operators that have some general benefits knowledge. They also, you can go to a website, chooseworkttw.net website, and they also have a place where you can sign up for some webinars that can give you some basics as well. Or you can utilize my program services, the Utah Work Incentive Planning Services, and our resources. And we serve people who are on Social Security who are wanting to know how work affects their benefits. And the contact information is on that slide. So if you have any questions, go ahead and look at the slides, look through the slides, and also call that number.